Um, a very warm good afternoon to one and all. And it brings us to the second edition of our Wow Wednesday lecture, that is Words of Wisdom. And it is my privilege today to have Mr. Anand Vijay Jha with us, the Chief Public Policy Officer at Walmart India. And without wasting the time, I'll just quickly introduce the speaker for today to our audience. And quickly moving on, I'll just take a couple of minutes for your introduction. And then quickly we move and hand over the session to Sir so that we all, for what we were waiting for so long, we can get an opportunity to hear him as well. So, Anand Vijay Jha is the Chief Public Policy Officer for Walmart India. He is responsible for government relations and public policy, corporate communications, philanthropy, and the company's social responsibility and sustainability initiatives. An ex-civil servant, before joining Walmart, Anand was the Additional Director General and Director in the Competition Commission of India. Prior to CCI, Anand served with the Government of India, holding several high-profile assignments, including being the Commissioner of Mumbai Division of Indian Railways, wherein he has the responsible for all aspects of communications for commuter safety. As director in the ministry, he was responsible for legislative drafting and interpretation of statutes affecting the supply chain management and policy making, execution and monitoring on all human resources matters. Anand also played a role in setting up an operationalization of Rail Land Development Authority, RLDA, a statutory body responsible for raising revenue through non-tariff measures such as commercial leasing of land. Anand is an LLB from Campus Law Center, University of Delhi, and LLM in International Trade and Commercial Laws from Durham University, UK. He also holds an MBA in Strategy from the Faculty of Management Studies, University of Delhi. He has received training at several premier institutions such as IAS Academy Masuri, ISB Hyderabad, and INSEAD. He is the regular visiting faculty in top law business schools and public administration institutions. On that note, we welcome you, sir, and would, I guess, sir, just be back. Yeah, on that note, I welcome you, sir, and now we'll hand over the session to you.
Thank you, Dr. Srivastav. Am I visible and audible?
No, sir, you are not visible. You are just audible right now.
Just 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Is it visible now?
Perfect. Yes, sir.
Okay, because there are challenges in terms of connections. I just wanted to be in a place where I can be seen properly by all of you and properly. Yeah. So I think that was a very elaborate kind of an introduction, and thank you so much for that. I was quite excited to see the profile of your school. Public policy studies, and it's not a very formalized kind of a thing in India yet. So it's great to see that more such schools are coming up, and India is a very vast country. If you read our history, then maybe in our history one Chandrasekhar Azad was sufficient. But modern India, probably every district requires 100 Chandrasekhar Azads to make this country worth living. So what I'm trying to say is that in terms of public policy studies, it's very important that we start the education of public policy all across India. And I'm glad that Jagran is very tactically located in terms of central part of India, and there are many public policy schools, in this particular area. So just a few housekeeping questions I wanted to understand is everybody comfortable in Hindi and English?
Yes, sir.
So it's not an issue. I mean, I just wanted to know because so that I can use a English kind of a thing for quoting examples and all.
Surely, sir, surely.
Can you all see me and hear me?
Yes, sir. We can see you. We can hear you as well.
Perfect. So let's get started then. So I think the key thing about this particular lecture is I wanted to share with you all on how to approach this subject. So so that students and faculty can make a sense out of whatever you all are doing. I mean, whatever you all are putting your time and energy into it. So I would say that best way to understand it is how does it happen in operation. So some of you have come here to do an undergraduate degree, some of you are there to do a master's degree, faculty wants to do a teaching as well as research so that they can as a professional in this field grow. So how should you look at this subject? So I'm sure there are multiple ways on the same subject can be looked at. But unfortunately, in India, when you are studying something, the first thing that is there from students' perspective is whether they'll get an employment or not. And if you look at from the teacher's perspective, then from their perspective, whether students are interested or not. See, like Priya may be knowing so many things in public administration, but typically a teacher shares something only when he finds that the student is interested. Otherwise, they just restrict to some syllabus which has been provided by the university, and at the end of the month probably be happy with what salary they have been provided. But the teacher and student relationship becomes something to be really remembered when there is one student out of many who is interested, because a teacher might have learned so many things in his lifetime and his career and research, but until as the student is interested, the urge to go beyond the syllabus or go beyond the classroom time is never there. So from this is more from the point of view of the student should start looking at what they have taken up very seriously. I have always believed that human beings are designed, so ever since we are born, basically our time is reducing and we are fast accelerating towards our death. So you have very limited time around. So you need to do whatever you want to do within this limited time. So like most of you appear to be younger than me, so I'm jealous of you all. I have lesser time than you all probably. But there's nothing to be very worried about, because it's all dependent upon how well we use our time. So while by the law of averages, I may have another 30 years, and some of you who are undergraduate students may have 70 years. But if I can do more in 30 years, then probably I have outrun you, even though you have a longer period available. So it's important that when you embark upon a journey, like you have embarked upon a subject of public policy, you make it worthwhile. You take an interest in the subject, understand what's happening, and then find out your area, and then pursue that area. So that's a very broad kind of a thing that I wanted to say to all of you, so that if you're in the wrong profession, if you're in the wrong classroom, please leave, because there is no good time to quit if you are not going to do anything about it. I did a graduation in mathematics for 4 years, and I tell you, I don't know anything. In fact, my one day my spouse told my kids that why don't you go and ask your father? He can probably explain the maths some better. So my son, who was already 10, 12 years, he came to me and he made a caricature face towards me, looked at me and said, "You are maths honors." So my children could not believe that I have done a graduation in mathematics. And I don't blame them, because actually I studied something which I was not at all interested, and therefore I didn't apply my mind, time, energy, and it's very visible in my life that I have very little mathematics to actually take use of in day-to-day life. So don't do that mistake which I did in my lifetime, and this is especially for undergrad students. It's never a wrong time to do a right thing. So if you have entered in something which you don't think is right, you must quit, take something else, start afresh. But for those of you who are actually think that you are interested in this subject and you want to know, maybe I'll spend next 20 minutes trying to explain what this subject is all about, so that you can actually start getting to know about it. So there is of course a syllabus and there are books prescribed for which your teachers are probably better suited than I am. But let us look at how this subject unfolds. The study of public policy, what does it actually mean? So it is neither the study of law nor the study of business. It is neither the study of society nor the study of individuals. So it's neither social nor political nor economic, but it is actually a juxtaposition, or let's say a very interdisciplinary subject. So until as you develop an interdisciplinary mind, you will never be successful in this particular subject, whether you are a researcher, whether you are a sort of academician, or whether you're going to practice. So what I'll do is, in order to illustrate what I am claiming, I will take an example. so that from the example, everything is clear to all of you. So let's take the example of, just 1 second. I'm so sorry, there's nobody to even open the door, so I had to take a break. So I'll take an example so that from the example, it is clear to all of you how practical this subject is. So let's take an example of the ongoing conflict between India and China. So, as your school's name is Public Policy and International Affairs, let's try to mix the two topics and see how it comes out. So, ongoing conflict between India and China, uh, how is it of interest to a student or a faculty of Jagran Public Policy School? So, a conflict between India and China means re-examining or re-evaluating the defense policy of India. So if you look at what is happening, is that there is a historical challenge between India and China with respect to border. The border dispute had never been resolved. So there is a need to resolve the border dispute. So India's defense policy now, what does it require? It requires to understand that Chinese military strength is way beyond our strength. So militarily, actually, it is not very possible to respond effectively to China. So what India did is India used its economic power. What is economic power? India realizes that there are huge in Chinese investment in tech sector in India. So they banned some of the Chinese app. Now they banned, as you are aware, they banned TikTok, and recently they banned PUBG, which is very popular among young students and all. So India used its economic power to ban that. But they realized that it's not that easy to get away with China. So they wanted a mediation between India and China. Now, the relationship between China and US is not very good on these days. So what India did is, India, if you have noticed in last 3-4 months, Mr. Rajnath Singh has visited Moscow multiple times because Moscow is actually arbitrating between India and China. So one small dispute, and in Jagran school, some student who is interested in the external policy or external affairs or defense policy should start reading on what happened in history between India and China. What went wrong, what went right. So that as a policy, the role of the people who are in public policy is not to say things which are appealing, not to say things which addresses the gallery. It is about an honest and objective study of the situation and to give the policy makers an understanding of what are the options available to them. Policy, people who work in the field of policy are never liked by the policymakers because we are supposed to tell them honestly that these are the options before you. Naturally, people don't like it. I mean, imagine if I tell to government of India that your decision to ban, to reduce the Chinese investment in India is actually economically bad for India. Then will the policymakers like me in the finance ministry or the commerce ministry? No, they will not. But still, it is my job to tell them. So the Indian policymakers tried to sell the American companies that, look, it's a great opportunity for you. That because we are having a dispute with India and China, so therefore you should move your Chinese investments and come to India. But while Chinese policies are great and they have some defense and economic challenges with other countries, India's existing state of affairs is not as good as Vietnam. And Vietnam shares a common border with China. So some of the majority investments went to Vietnam. So people who are interested in understanding international trade, that's India-China border dispute is a matter of great interest of international trade. What's happening? So what did India do? India started banning Chinese goods. So we have imposed anti-dumping duties on Chinese goods in terms of API, which is in pharma. Then we have imposed anti-dumping duties on electronics goods in India. The government of India has increased the customs, duties on smartphone and electrical equipments. So whole lot of trade policy is getting impacted because of the China-India border dispute. So if you're a student of policy, you have to understand how the trade policy is getting impacted by a defense show of strength at a border in Leh Ladakh and Arunachal. So it does not reduce to that. Now, what happens is that the moment you say that Chinese goods will not be imported in India, Chinese goods were probably the best substitute of a decent quality and cheap rate goods for automobile. So Indian government is now trying to say that our automobile Chinese imports has reduced from 450 million rupees last year, $1 million in 2019 to some 257 this year. So it's a great statement to make on how we are becoming Atmanirbhar. But as a public policy student, if you buy that statement of the government, then you are stupid, because that's not a real statement. The real statement is that auto sector in India has gone to it has seen a major, drastic reduction in performance because there is no demand in the domestic market. So while the policy makers are trying to sell us that due to Atmanirbhar Bharat, the import from Chinese goods have reduced from $450 million to $250 million. As a people who are smart public policy analysts, you should be able to see that no. The real thing that is happening is that the demand in the automobile sector has gone down, and therefore the import demand has gone down. So when you say that we are going to restrict the Chinese goods on these smartphones, so now 3% duty has been increased on smartphone screens and some other electronic equipments associated with smartphones. So what does that happen? That increases the cost of your smartphone. Now, right now, our domestic manufacturing is not in that shape that they can make the same level of smartphones as the Chinese smartphones, whether it is Apple or whether it is whoever. Even the Indian players, they are importing majority of things from China. So what does it happen? So if in order to make it Atmanirbhar Bharat, we impose a duty on Chinese goods, what happens to our education policy? So in COVID, you have said that more and more students should be taught online, like we are learning online. So if we are trying to learn, more and more people have to learn online. What does that mean? That more and more online tools and gadgets should be available to the masses. Now, when you look at the masses, a figure which is interesting is that last year Income Tax Department reported that there are just 6,000 people in India who report an annual income of over 1 crore in terms of personal income tax. Just 6,000 people. So what are we trying to say? We are trying to say that the whole masses of India are actually not that rich to be able to afford laptops or smartphones which are high end. They need a lower end laptop and smartphones so that education is accessible to them. So if education has to be accessible, you make a great policy, but until as you provide accessibility, that policy is of no use. So until as gadgets and tools are available to Indians and masses, this is not going to take us anywhere. So students of public policy, people who are evaluating policies have to understand that any policy decision. So you took a decision saying that, look, we will not allow Chinese investments in India. Right? So 100 Chinese FDI investments in India are under more scrutiny right now. Now, if you do not allow Chinese investments in India, where will the investments come from? I mean, right now, the money is available only in China. That's a hard fact. I mean, US is a pale shadow of China in terms of rate of growth. I'm sure recently all of you saw that chart which was said on how did the economy perform during the pandemic times, which showed that the Indian economy had gone down by 23 to 28%, whereas the Chinese economy was still at 8 to 9%. What does that mean? That means that spare money is available only with the Chinese people. And if you're trying to scrutinize that money on the pretext of national security, then naturally your startups, your entrepreneurs, they will get impacted. Because, see, people come to India because they believe that India is a great market. They believe that because of the population of this country, whatever product we launch here, if we can capture even 1% of the population, we will make a fortune. That's a hard fact. That's how every commercial entity thinks about India. So as people who are trying to study policy, what you have to look at is, as an incident, you look at one incident, people, I always say this example that what is the problem between India and China? If I'm correct, Mr. Srivastava, this institute is in Bhopal?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what is the challenge between India and China? I'm sure the auto rickshaw driver or the rickshaw puller in Bhopal is also aware to a certain degree. How do you distinguish yourself from them? So let's take it to the next level. What about a knowledge of a person who is in business school? The dispute between India and China, the business school fellow also knows. So why should a person hire a public policy school guy when the business school fellow already knows he also has an MBA, so he will be hired? So every time, if you want to make a mark or a distinction, then your knowledge, your understanding of the subject has to be way above and of a higher quality than any of the other competitors in the market. And you are not competing just with business school. You are competing with the rickshaw puller also in Bhopal because he is also reading the newspaper. So your ability to analyze a subject, to think interdiscipline, to think on what a simple step can make or mar situation in a country is something which will really help you develop in this stream of public policy. And it's a very broad stream. So as a young student, probably you should study the art of policy making, legislation, laws, and I'm sure there are great modules there. But as and when you start growing, start reading the newspaper, or when you start reading a particular news, start thinking of multiple ways in which we get impacted by a simple so one border dispute between India and China, we have talked about defense policy. I didn't talk about foreign policy. I just said that Rajnath Singh went to Moscow, and India, while has a great relationship with US, and US from India bought a lot of defense equipment from US in during this period, especially high technology defense equipment. India continued to maintain its foreign relationship with Russia because China is prepared to make Russia an arbitrator and not America. So that is another. The Ministry of External Affairs, they combined their two divisions, the ASEAN division and the Oceanic division, to make a separate division to study only the growing challenge of China. Government of India, 10 days, 5 days back, 4 days, 2 days back, ONGC announced a $6 billion project in Myanmar on oil drilling and gas. And the reason is that if you look at the Chinese investment in Myanmar, slowly and steadily, Myanmar is also going away from us. So one border dispute between India and China, government of India calls up ONGC and says, invest in Myanmar. So they invest $6 billion in Myanmar just to counterbalance the Chinese investment impact. There is the freely available knowledge. आप लोग YouTube में जाते हो, इतनी सारी चीजें देखते हो. Kindly try to see things which the government is also not showing you, because it's important as a people who will contribute in the knowledge to understand what's happening. So border, the relationship between China and Pakistan. Well, government of India does not want China and Pakistan to come close. They have been historically close. But how is that relationship actually changing Pakistan? And is there anything which, as a student of policy, we should also take note of? Because today, what is happening is that, surprisingly, in Pakistan, people are learning Mandarin because Chinese investment is available in every nook and corner of Pakistan. So Mandarin is becoming a popular language in every African country because Chinese investment is going on everywhere. So it's not just about economics, it's also about culture. So as a public policy student, you need to have a much more holistic. So we talked about defense policy, we talked about foreign policy, we talked about the policy on manufacturing. So now the government of India is saying that all essential equipments which are coming from China, they will undergo a test of quality and scrutiny. So your manufacturing policy changes, your pharma policy has already changed because your API imports is stopping. What I'm saying that you look at already commerce policy is changing, your tech policy is changing. You said METI is involved today in trying to stop the Chinese apps and Chinese technology from coming to India because it's a belief that they're extracting our data and using for military intelligence. Good. But what is happening to those who are competing them? Look at the American tech companies. So at one side, we are trying to ban China, but at the other side, the American tech company like Apple, Google, Facebook, there is a huge cry by the Indian players that these people are exploitators. They are using antitrust and anti-competitive laws in the Google App Store. You can't have the app of Paytm. You can't have the app of PhonePe. They are asking for charges. So all the Indian payment wallets have ganged up together, and they have lodged a complaint with Ministry of Science and Technology that kindly stop Google from doing that. So while it's not a good time for the Chinese tech company, at the same time, it is not a great time for the American tech companies also, because government of India is very conscious that we cannot allow their domination. There is a PDP bill which is pending in the parliament. There was a national retail policy which has been pending for a very long time because we have a confrontation going on between India and China, and majority of the goods which are, yeah, I'll just switch off my webcam because it shows that my connection is a little weak. Yeah? So as majority of the, can you still hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, good. So as majority of the goods which are sold in the e-commerce company are of Chinese origin, the government of India decided that no, let's ban the Chinese origin goods from coming to the Indian market. But if you do that, then actually what is going to happen is that you need to have a more robust retail policy. So 10 days back, the Minister of Commerce announced in Rajya Sabha that he is planning to get the national retail policy in place immediately. So what I'm trying to say is that one incident of China, and there is impact everywhere. I can go on and on. I can talk about multiple more areas where actually the the government of India had to change its stand, or the government of India had to actually start the issue of looking at the policies afresh. So cutting the long story short and going back to the topic, that's one. Let's take another example. Simple reform of farm bill. So three farm laws have come. All the farmers are agitating in India. Government is shocked. Why is the government shocked? Because that farm bill is supposed to support the farmers. But farmers themselves are agitating because there is a fear that under the garb of the new APMC removal laws that have come, government may actually do away with MSP pricing policy. So the opposition is asking that will you do away with the MSP? The government is not giving a commitment. It is not saying that MSP will not be there. It is still debating whether MSP will be there or not, and whether we should be saying anything directly or not. So as a student of public policy, you need to look at any news which comes in a big time. What are some of the other great news which we have seen recently? There was a labor wage code which has come out. Now, if you look at the labor wage code, the trade unions are agitating, saying that this new wage code does not allow the freedom to form trade unions, and freedom for a collective bargain is actually curtailed in the new wage code. So therefore, we are going to do an all India strike. I think they have planned it on 13th or 16th of October by all trade unions. While as government has brought a new wage code with the idea that it should be more business friendly, so that more and more entrepreneurs and business people can start hiring and firing people more easily. But at the same time, there is the politics of labor and trade union leaders. So as students of public policy, and I am also a student, though I am not enrolled in university, our constant challenge is that whenever we look at an issue which has come out, we should look at what is the political angle of it, what is the economic impact of it, and what is the social angle of it. You look at the farm bill. Farm bill government brought, the ruling party's own coalition member Akali Dal walked out of the government in India. Now, but government did not try to stop it. So while Akali Dal might have walked out on the pretext of the farm bill, the fact that government did not try to stop Akali Dal shows another political angle. And that the political angle is that probably in terms of politically speaking, Akali Dals are lightweight. They are no more heavyweights. So therefore, government did not think it very important to stop them. But what's happening in Punjab? The ruling party is supporting the agitation of the farmers, that is the Congress. And the opposition till yesterday, that is Akali Dal, is also supporting the agitation of the farmers. So businesses, how they are impacted. Like we have a lot of business in Punjab. In other parts of the country, the farmers' agitation has not made that impact because governments are not supporting the agitators. But in Punjab, the ruling party is also supporting, opposition is supporting. So all businesses are at standstill. So as a public policy student, I call upon you to open your mind and start looking at a subject differently. Definitely study law, definitely study constitution, definitely understand the distribution of power, division of power between center and state, federalism. What is the concept of federalism and how it is being challenged today? Till yesterday, you had a prime minister, and then there are chief ministers who are more like, we met the prime minister and we had a dinner. Today, things have changed. We have chief ministers who are much more volatile and powerful than the prime minister. Under the federal system, the government, central government, has control only over the union list. On the state list, they have no control. So if you look at businesses, majority of the business laws are actually laws which operate in state list, whether it is land, whether it is police, whether it is Shops and Establishments Act. So licenses, all licenses are operated by the state government. So from businesses point of view, state governments, their political mandate, their understanding of the economic and social situation is very important. Then, the last thing that I want to touch upon before, I ask you all to ask questions and I can respond is the issue of employment. If you remember, I started with that students who enter the college today think, if I put in 10 lakhs rupees in 4 years, will I be able to get a job which is at least of 5 lakhs per annum? And you are not just the only ones. Everyone in India is looking at what is the employment scope for them in times to come. So every policy in India that the framers are making and those who are studying should pass through that lens on whether it is going to increase employment or whether it is going to reduce employment. Because then only the policy will be bought in by the multiple stakeholders, whether it is those who are unemployed or whether the state governments. So if there is a policy or there is a business proposal which creates jobs, actually that is something which is a win-win for everybody, and everybody wants to show they have actually worked for the I don't know whether I made sense while speaking for last half an hour, but I'm done here and now I'm open for questions.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. And I guess through your example as well, you have clearly made it across that it's not only one angle when it comes to a public policy. And one dispute that we just see on a front page of a newspaper is worth all the pages of the newspaper, rather. So thank you so much, sir. I guess the first question that has popped in across is what, according to you, shall be the basics when it comes for students to start framing and learning to frame the public policy?
So I think the first thing is that you should, as a student, you should focus on trying to learn on how is any law made in India. So let's look at. So let me take a 2-minute session on this. On the top of everything is the Constitution. The Constitution says that we are bound by the international law. So there is an article in the Constitution which says that we will honor everything which was being honored by the government before the Constitution came into being. So we adapted all on the day of our independence when the Constitution was passed, because the Constitution says that we'll adopt everything that is pre-existing, and thereafter the Parliament has a right through the process of acceptance whether they will accept an international treaty or not. So as a country, when our Constitution got passed and our country was recognized as a global sovereign, as a power who can govern its people, we got a mandate to negotiate with the government. Like when the Prime Minister he went to United Nations General Assembly. So in what capacity did he go? Because United Nations has recognized India as a country. So a good study of law will help you understand the license to operate as a country. Why, how, and why do we operate? So as a country, we are recognized globally as being a member of the United Nations and member of all international institutions that you know of. Now, inside the country, we have a constitution. The constitution says who will do what. Everybody, and I'll take a very crude example. Mr. Srivastava, let's take example of your dean. He has absolutely no power. All his powers are from constitution. And I will explain you how. So, Mr. Srivastava, every time he wants to do anything, he has to look at the academic council or the governing council of the university. Now, if you look at the governing council and academic council of the university, they are formed under the Universities Act, which says that any university to exist needs to have an academic council, needs to have a governing council. Approval will take through this process. It has to get that level. And then they say that the governor of a state is the chancellor of all the universities in a state. So naturally, any amendment, modification that you do in your university, which Mr. Srivastava plans to do, will have to be sent to the governor. Now, if you look at the governors are appointed under the constitutional provision. The Constitution says that the governor is the chancellor of all the universities, and the governor's appointment is through the president. The president himself is appointed through the Constitution, which lays down what are the powers of the president. It says that the president will exercise all his powers through an executive. And who is the executive? The Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. So the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers have been given legislative power the power of an executive. Legislative power is in the parliament, and once the parliament has passed the statute, the executive implements it. So how does it happen? If you want to make an amendment in the Universities Act, you make a proposal and a cabinet note. The minister in charge of HRD, that is Mr. Nishank, he will place that proposal bill in the parliament. The parliament will pass it. That bill will say that under this bill, the governor has the power to approve a change or let's take an example. This university has been formed under the Private Universities Act, if I'm correct, Mr. Srivastava. It's a private university.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Perfect. So how did that university itself come into being? It came into being because the Constitution provides that the legislators can make such a law. And then they made such a law. The Private Universities Act was passed. So what I'm trying to say is that nothing in this country can be done unless it is backed by a constitutional provision. As a young student, that is not visible to you. The moment you are able to unravel the mystery on how your act is actually supported by the Constitution, you will become a top-class student of public policy. Let me give an example. So you are participating, you are asking questions, but why should you ask questions? Who allowed you to ask questions? Your authority to ask questions also comes from a constitution, which says that there's a right to life. Right to life means right to live with dignity. A dignified life means being able to live life in its full totality, being able to realize it. Then they say that freedom and speech is basically a part of right to life. Because until I have a freedom of speech and expression, life has no meaning. I cannot exercise and use my life to the full extent. So therefore, Constitution gives you the right to enjoy your life. Sit by, Gopal Talab, Talaiya, Bhadbada, enjoy your life, spend some time with your friends, and let me not go into the gender. Yeah. Everything through some law. Some more questions.
Yes, sir. The second question is what is the government of India's policy on cryptocurrency, and will Walmart accept the cryptos?
Perfect. So I guess that's let me close the first question. Yeah. So let me close the first question. The first question was that as a young student, what should we do? I would say that as a young student, you must understand the process of law making in India. Policy is a product of law. So as I was saying, that at the top is the Constitution. Under the Constitution, we make the acts. Under the acts, there are rules, regulations. Under the rules and regulations, there are office orders. There are, executive orders. There are government orders. So if you want to understand the policy is a byproduct of even a government order. So a simple policy will come that during the, it has been decided. So I was reading that Madhya Pradesh decided that all the jobs in Madhya Pradesh will be for local people. Now, as a young student of law, you should examine whether this is a legal policy or not. So the announcement by the Honorable Chief Minister will not stand the scrutiny of any court. Forget about Supreme Court. Because under the Indian law, Article 301 of the Indian Constitution says right to freedom of trade, commerce and intercourse. So you can practice your profession, you can get employment anywhere in India. So there is a right to employment in this country. Of course, if you're working in Tamil Nadu government has a right to say that you should be able to pass Tamil language exam. You should be able to converse in Tamil, because then only that will make you effective. So I'm closing that first question by saying that a good study of the legal process, Constitution, how the devolution of power has taken place, will help you understand the constitutionality of a policy. I mean, how does the policy come into being? Yeah. Okay. Let's go to the second question. Very interesting question. We are far away from accepting cryptocurrency. We have a lot of challenges. Because see, as a country, our biggest challenge is not the development of the technology. Cryptocurrency. So I get, after every week, I get some query from US on, I want to train you on crypto, and why don't India accept crypto? Issue is not about you and me. Issue is about the masses of this country. You have to understand that banking as a profession has been come to know to this country only last 5 years with the majority of the people. They did not have a bank account. So if you want the people, if you want the government that crypto should be accepted, it should become popular, then it's a great thing, great area to pursue. But then you have to learn to speak the language of the common masses. Learn to understand crypto as a business model, which can be understood by an illiterate person also. Having full trust that he will not be cheated. Having full trust that the negotiation that he is entering into is fully legal and will be backed by the courts of this country. We have not reached that stage. Yes, Mr. Srivastava.
Yes, sir. So thank you so much on that. The next question is how far you think that Walmart, being an American company, and as you have cited the examples for American companies like Google and Apple, so how far do you think that American companies and the related subjects will be a help in improving the Indian economy?
So let me take a very Gujarati route of explaining what affects economy. See, people. So the concept of country or nation state is not very old. So let's understand that 300, 400 years back, there was nothing called country. So people could just, you can take your, Thela Gadi, Bail Gadi and go to China and do shopping. You have heard about that old Silk Route, how Marco Polo came and upload Netflix mein dekhte rehte ho. So if you look at if you start looking things from a long-term perspective, then country itself does not have a lot of validity. So 300 years before, there was nothing called country. So, and if you look at modern democracies, then 100 years before, there was nothing called modern democracy. If you look at India as a concept, 70 years before the India meant Pakistan, it also meant Bangladesh, it also meant Myanmar. But now we have 4 countries. It also meant Nepal, it also meant Bhutan. So we have probably 6 countries now. Right? So India per se itself is not even 70, 75 years old in terms of understanding. Now, coming back to your question on how does American companies impact the Indian economy? No, it is, they actually, I will reframe the question. The question is something different. How as a country are we attractive for any money anywhere in the world? So money grows at a certain rate across the globe. So if you look at the American rate of growth of our money, so the rate of growth of economy is 2% to 3%. So it is not possible to get if you invest 10 rupees in America, what does it mean? That by and large, you will get 2 rupees at the, 20 paise at the end of the year. So if you invest 100 rupees, you will get 102 rupees at the end of the year. And similarly, you can make a comparison all across. So I'm talking about a broad principle. So there is an understanding that if you invest 100 rupees in India, then your chances of getting 105 rupees at the end of the year is very high. Actually, a lot of people have made 125 rupees. Because if you look at the Sensex growth rate, then people have made more than 15 to 25% on an average on mutual funds, on equities. So which shows that if you're an intelligent investor, you can make a whole lot of money in this country. Now, how does that money come to India? That's the right question. So there are multiple modes of that money coming to India. Remittances. ऐसा क्या होता है कि इंडियन लोग पैसा कमाते हैं अमेरिका में लेकिन फ्लैट खरीदते हैं गाजियाबाद में या खरीदते हैं भोपाल में? क्यों कर रहे हैं? कोलार रोड पे क्यों फ्लैट खरीद रहे हैं जबकि नौकरी वहां पे कर रहे हैं? क्योंकि आपको जाके आश्चर्य होगा कि अमेरिका में जो फ्लैट आपने खरीदा है उसका 1 साल के बाद रेट ऑफ एप्रिसिएशन 2% होता है. यूके में उसका रेट ऑफ एप्रिसिएशन -1% होता है. वो सस्ता हो जाता है. So naturally, people are looking at those economies where there is a great rate of. हमारे यहाँ बड़ा प्रॉब्लम था because of huge circulation of black money. हमारे यहाँ भी rate of growth was very artificial. So यहाँ पे real estate में आपको growth 20 से 25% भी मिल जाता था. तो जिन लोगों ने अपने भोपाल में कोलार रोड में मकान खरीद लिया या कोई भदभदा में खरीद लिया, अगर 2010 में खरीदा था तो 2015 तक तो उन लोगों ने पता नहीं कितने पैसे कमा लिए. लेकिन 15 से 20 में वो 25% से घट के 15% हो गया है और लोगों को दिखाई दे रहा है कि 2020 से 25 में वो 15% घट के 5 से 7% होने वाला है, कुछ जगह पे घटने वाला है. So whether American companies can impact the Indian economy or want to impact the Indian economy is completely dependent upon how attractive the Indian economy will continue to be. It's not a question of American. More and more corporations will keep coming to India. Why are Chinese interested in India? Because after China, the maximum rate of growth is in India. Of course, I forgot to say Vietnam, which has more growth rate than China also. There are some others. Even Bangladesh is growing at a faster rate than us. More than 10% of growth every year on year for last 10 years, 1 decade. So I don't know whether I answered that question, but that's my answer.
Thank you so much, sir. And I guess that answer was perfectly to the question that was asked across. So we have the next question. So your views on the current government international diplomacy in comparison of the UPA government, and what India can do to stop the CPEC project in Gilgit-Baltistan.
So, as a public policy people, and this is to all of you, one of the cardinal rules of public, जैसे कि जादूगर होता है ना भाई, तो वो थोड़ी बता देता है कि कैसे उसने आदमी को काटा और फिर जोड़ दिया, राइट? तो वैसे ही पब्लिक पॉलिसी के जितने लोग होते हैं वो अपना पोजीशन कभी नहीं बताते। सो आप लोगों को एज अ फंडामेंटल रूल आपसे भी कभी पूछा जाए तो आप सारे इश्यूज डिस्कस करो, बट अपना पोजीशन मत बताओ कि मेरा क्या पोजीशन है। तो आपका जो सवाल है ना कि यूपीए से ये एनडीए कैसा कंपेयर होता है, इसका आंसर है कि यूपीए का टाइम चला गया, अभी एनडीए का टाइम, तो कंपैरिजन करने का कोई मतलब नहीं होता। 2010 में जो मेरे पास ऑप्शंस अवेलेबल थे इन टर्म्स ऑफ करियर, वो 2020 में नहीं अवेलेबल है। और आप लोगों में से जो थोड़े यंग हो, आपके पास जो ऑप्शन अवेलेबल है राइट नाउ एज ए गर्लफ्रेंड, 5 साल बाद तो नहीं अवेलेबल होगा, क्योंकि तब वो डिपेंडेंट हो जाएगी आपकी जॉब कैसी है। सो दीज थिंग्स आर वेरी डायनेमिक, यू कैन नॉट आंसर वेदर यूपीए वाज बेटर और एनडीए वाज बेटर। But coming back to the second part of the question, and Mr. Srivastava, would you repeat the second part of the question, because that was good?
Yes, sir. The second question is what India can do to stop CPEC project in Gilgit-Baltistan.
Yeah. Perfect. So, there are two ways of looking at it. Whether you can stop it, well, you cannot. And the reason is very simple. Because today, China is, so आप लोग को अभी मुझे नहीं पता किस स्टेज में आप लॉ के पहुंचे, but there is something called de facto and de jure. So de jure is कि भाई ऑफिशियली कौन है, तो ऑफिशियली वर्ल्ड नंबर 1 इकोनॉमी यूएस है। de facto is कि रियल में कौन है, तो रियल में वर्ल्ड नंबर 1 इकोनॉमी चाइना है। So today China is a very big power. And when I say it's a big power, not only economically, diplomatically also. If there is a vote on some issues today at the global level, then there are countries which will fall by the side of China for the right reasons and for the wrong reasons, but they will side with China. So let's say African countries, China has made so much of investment in those countries that naturally they will side by China. तो इंडिया का आर्ग्यूमेंट क्या है कि अरे भाई ये तो एक्सप्लॉयटेशन हो रहा है उन कंट्रीज से, चाइना ने उनको ऑलरेडी लीज पे रख लिया है वगैरह वगैरह, ठीक है। तो इंडिया और नेपाल के बीच में क्या एक्सप्लॉयटेशन हो रहा है? इंडिया और नेपाल की फ्रेंडशिप तो पता नहीं पिछले 70 साल से थी। आपको पता है इंडिया और नेपाल के बीच में क्या प्रॉब्लम हुआ है? इंडिया ने जितने प्रोजेक्ट प्रॉमिस किए थे नेपाल में, वो कोई भी टाइम पे डिलीवर नहीं हुए। सबका जो प्रोजेक्ट डिले है वो 5 से 10 साल पीछे चल रहा है। चाइना ने जितने प्रोजेक्ट प्रॉमिस किए नेपाल में, सब वो बिफोर टाइम खत्म हुआ। तो नेचुरली नेपाल से forget about this India-Nepal friendship. If we can get the project faster, because our people need electricity, our people need employment. If China is getting it faster, let us get it. So there is no absolute answer to this. Answer is that you should look at case-to-case basis. It's a fact that the OBBR project, the CPAC project, is actually very good for the economy of Pakistan. Now, if something is good for the economy of Pakistan, it need not necessarily be bad for the Indian economy. See, one of the reasons why there is so much of terrorism in any country, whether it is Pakistan or any other country, is lack of employment, lack of positive opportunities. So I think one good way to look at CPAC project is that there is great economic progress taking place in Pakistan because of people. People are actually having something good to talk about. For once, they have shifted from talking from Kashmir to talking about the great roads that is coming in CPAC. It's a good thing. So therefore, my answer is that we can't stop it. What we should do is we should keep exposing to the world and Pakistan that look, while this is great for visibility in terms of employment, in terms of economic progress, but I hope you are not getting into long-term debt. If you are getting into long-term debt, please come to us or come to the globe. We will help you come out of China. So while Pakistan can continue to take economic benefits from China, when it comes to being exploited by China, India should offer its hand to Pakistan to actually say that we will support you, ensuring that you don't get exploited by China. So that will something which we can do. We can't stop that project. It is not possible. We are not. See, this is not a jingoist world. आप लोगों ने अगर चाणक्य को पढ़ा है, जिन लोगों ने पढ़ा है, तो चाणक्य कहते हैं कि शक्तिशाली दोस्त होते हैं। मेरा दुश्मन शक्तिशाली है, ये मूर्खता की निशानी है। So we, India as a country, can never consider or made it visible to China that we are their enemy. What we have to make them visible is that yes, we have a border dispute. We have to solve the border. But we are not there to fight China. We don't want to have a war with China or defeat China. That is not a, you can never fight a person who is at the place of dominance. But you can still negotiate with a person who is in the place of dominance by making him see those pictures which are otherwise not visible to the world. देखिए, इस चीज पे मैं एक और बात कहना चाहूंगा. अगर आप लोग ध्यान से दुनिया को देख रहे हो तो पहले दुनिया में लड़ाई तेल के लिए हो रही थी. तो तेल के लिए जब लड़ाई हो रही थी तो अमेरिका ने सारे उन देशों को बर्बाद कर दिया जिनके पास तेल था, चाहे वो इराक था, कुवैत था, ईरान था, कोई भी कंट्री आप ले लो. लफड़ा इतनी बात है कि अमेरिका को उनके तेल में इंटरेस्ट है. अनफॉर्चुनेटली जो बहुत सारे लोगों को नहीं समझ में आ रही है, जो कि आज के ज्यादा से ज्यादा टेक कंपनीज उस डेटा को यूज करके इकोनॉमी को बदल सकते हैं, इलेक्शंस को बदल सकते हैं, डेमोक्रेसी को चेंज कर सकते हैं, लोगों के टेस्ट को बदल सकते हैं. तो अगर डेटा की लड़ाई हो रही है तो भाई मेरे लड़ाई उन कंट्रियों के लिए होगी जहां पे ज्यादा से ज्यादा डेटा है और लोगों के पास ज्यादा से ज्यादा स्कोप है. तो भाई लोग तो इंडिया में ज्यादा हैं, डेटा तो हमारे पास ज्यादा है. तो कल तक जैसे हम इराक को देखते थे, कुवैत को देखते थे, एज ए पर्सन हु इज लुकिंग एट द फ्यूचर, मैं अपने आप को फ्यूचर का कुवैत देखता हूं फ्रॉम अमेरिका एंड चाइना's पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू, कि दोनों के लिए मैं for both America and China, we are a market, nothing more. So we must learn how to keep both of them at a distance, at a safe way. While we should take advantage, while we should globally be integrated, but at the same time, we should know that they are only interested in our country because we are a huge market, because we have huge data. They have no long-term noble interest कि भारत एक सोने की चिड़िया फिर से बन जाए.
Thank you so much, sir. And I guess with the paucity of time, we can take two more questions. So the first is the role of internships, especially in public policy, and shall that be towards the public side or towards the corporate sector like yours?
So purely depend upon what you want to do. देखो भाई, I'll tell you my example. I qualified civil services in first attempt. I came from Bihar. I was from a very feudal society. मेरी society में, if you qualified civil services, all of a sudden your parents become respectful, in society. All of a sudden you got a great spouse, or you had become a great prospect as a bridegroom, because a lot of good offers will come to you for marriages. Your social status changed. So when I was coming out of that society, I had only that thing in mind. I wrote civil services qualified, worked here for 20 years, and realized that by civil services is a very outdated kind of a system for a very outdated society. Modern thing is corporations. ये मेरे सोच थी. आज की सोच क्या है मैं बताता हूँ. Having joined the corporations, I say that a person who is most powerful is a person who is entrepreneur. Somebody जो अपना धंधा करता है, जो अपने 5 लोगों को एम्प्लॉय करता है, अपने 10 लोगों को एम्प्लॉय करता है. हमारे कंट्री में अभी वो स्टेज नहीं आया, आ जाए. जैसे अमेरिका में आज भी अगर आप 20 लोगों को एम्प्लॉयमेंट दे सकते हैं तो आपको सिटीजनशिप मिल सकती है. पाठक जी, आपको भी, किसी को भी, जो भी अमेरिका में अपना पैसा लगा के 20 लोगों को नौकरी दे सकता है, उसको अमेरिकन गवर्नमेंट सिटीजनशिप देती है. हमारे देश में क्या होता है मैं बताता हूँ. मैं अपना दुकान लगाऊंगा, कोई ये आपका जो स्टूडेंट पूछा है क्वेश्चन, ये अपना पब्लिक पॉलिसी का कंसल्टेंसी खोलेगा, सामने बोर्ड लगाएगा तो पहले पुलिस वाले आ जाएंगे, भाई आपने इसका लाइसेंस लिया है. फिर म्यूनिसिपैलिटी आ जाएगी, फिर उसका बिजली वाला आ जाए, तो 50 लोग हैरेस करने आते. That scenario has to change. So when I talk to the policy makers, I say that look, the only difference between America and India is that in America entrepreneurs are celebrated. अगर कोई लोग 5 आदमी को नौकरी दे रहा है तो उसको वहां का पुलिस वाला आके पूछता है कि आपको कोई दिक्कत तो नहीं हो रही, मैं कुछ मदद करूं. म्यूनिसिपैलिटी आके पूछती है कि आपको क्या सपोर्ट दे सकते हैं, उसको टैक्स रिबेट मिलता है, उसको सिटीजनशिप ऑफर मिलता है. हमारे कंट्री में भी वो चीज करना पड़ेगा. To answer the question more literally, what you asked is, it is purely your choice. If you come from, see, at the age of 21, my biggest goal in life was मैं अपने माँ बाप को समाज में कैसे रिस्पेक्ट दिलाऊं. तो उस समय भाई सिविल सर्विसेज मैं 1996 में आई क्वालिफाइड GNIT 4 ईयर कंप्यूटर इंजीनियरिंग, और मैं अपनी मदर को लेके गया. मुझे स्कॉलरशिप मिला था 75%. मेरी मदर ने उसको फाड़ के डस्टबिन में डाल दिया और बोला ये कंप्यूटर पे टिक टिक करने के लिए तुमको दिल्ली नहीं लाया. That was the mindset. To me, that was the most valuable thing, to qualify then the civil services. What is most valuable for you? आप वो pursue करो भाई. As I said in the beginning, हम लोग सब मरने वाले हैं, तो आप तो इस पे मत परस्यू करो कि आनंद विजय का क्या आइडिया है, आप तो ये परस्यू करो कि आपका लाइफ में क्या गोल है. Think clearly what you want and work in that direction.
Thank you, sir. And I guess the last question is from one of our panelists, Anshul Patel. Sir, I would have appreciated if sir would have asked that question. So Anshul sir, that would be really nice if you go ahead and ask that question. सर बहुत अच्छे हैं सर, ऐसा कुछ नहीं बोलते, आप पूछ सकते हो क्वेश्चन.
Sure, sir. Sir, my question is basically based upon the farm bill, whatever you have discussed in your session. There is a legitimate process for formulating and enacting a public policy in India. Public policy process in India is very much according to Constitution of India. But don't you think that passing the farm bill, there are some constitutional loopholes, as it can be said that a constitutional adventurism. The constitutional adventurism is a term coined by a Tata Institute of Social Science professor A. Ramkumar on passing the farm bill. That's why I'm asking, sir.
No. So, Mr. Pathak, that's a wonderful question. I'm in complete agreement with the professor of Tata Institute of Social Sciences, but I'm also in agreement that in democracy, it is the numbers which matter. The fact is that the opposition is not, see, clarity of communication, ability to galvanize people. पता नहीं आप लोगों को याद है कि नहीं, मैं बहुत छोटा था जब वीपी सिंह ने रेजिग्नेशन दे दिया राजीव गांधी कैबिनेट से, और उसने कहा कि भाई ये बोफोर्स स्कैंडल हुआ इलेक्शन. यू विल बी सरप्राइज्ड टू नो कि वीपी सिंह किसी भी कॉन्स्टिट्यूएंसी में जाके कोई स्पीच नहीं देते थे, वो केवल हाथ जोड़ के बोलते थे, मेरा आपसे निवेदन है कि कांग्रेसियों की जमानत जब्त करा दीजिए. He used to say that. He never said vote for me. He used to say Congress candidate should forfeit his deposit. He ensured that. But he had mobilized such a campaign against, around corruption in Bofors deal, that there was no way that a majority government could stop him. See, Rajiv Gandhi had an absolute majority when he lost that election. So what I'm trying to say is that opposition, see, there is a loophole, but democracy is also about who communicated what. If the opposition is not being able to communicate that there is a loophole, if the voice of the Tata Institute of Professor of Social Sciences, Mr. Ram Kumar or whatever you name, has not been taken as a hint by Congress and all those 60, 70 MPs or 150 MPs, why are they not repeating that speech everywhere in every nook and corner of the country? That's how you win democracy. See, in democracy, it doesn't matter what is being talked in the academic institutions. What matters is what happens right among the people. As I'm saying, in Punjab, the government is facing such a big problem on farmers' bill because the agitation there is 100% successful. No business is being able to operate in Punjab for the last 7 days. So, right question. Answer lies in fighting democracy in democratic ways. They were non-democratic, so the Congress or the opposition should bring that thing to more and more people's knowledge.
Yeah.
Mr. Srivastava, should we?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. Yes, sir. I know that you have an important board meeting and just a minute is left. So thank you so much, sir, for sparing out time. Thank you so much for sharing those wonderful ideas and igniting the minds of our young policymakers. And surely this is the first visit and not the last. And we would be more than happy to have you on our board. And as we were discussing it, it would just take a week more time to materialize it out. And so on that note, thank you so much, sir. And we wish you for your great health, especially during this pandemic times. And stay safe, and we'll surely be in connect with you. And we'll have more of such fruitful lectures. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much, Dr. Srivastava, all the faculty and students.